So hi everybody, we are Peer-to-Peer University, or simply P2PU. We are a team of 4 living in 4 different countries. My name is Becky and I am based in Berlin, Germany. My colleagues Nico and Grif are in the video, along with our colleague Nicole in Cologne. Nico is in Canada, Grif is in the United States, and our colleague Dirk is in the chat and he is in South Africa. We are, during the course of this session, we invite you to respond to questions or ask anything in the chat. You can always find us because we have the little P2PU logo as our icon. We are here to explore responsive community-based education online and offline with you. We'll explain our own philosophy on this concept, our program Learning Circles, which we've been running for the past 5 years. And we'll explain and workshop how you can get started with these right away in your area. So again, we'll be monitoring the chat. If you have any questions, if you want to share links, we encourage you to use that as much as possible. We will be doing some more collaborative workshops with the chat later on in the presentation. So just, you can, prepare for that at any time. So let's, and one other, so if you have any other specific questions for us or about your own programs, we also will have 2 live expo booth times over the next 2 days during the kind of big scheduled expo periods. So if you want to talk to us further, please stop by. So first, let's talk when we say responsive community-based education. Essentially, we mean programs that can evolve to create the best learning experience for everybody that's involved, no matter the circumstances. We're talking about, so if we define it, we're talking about programs that are adaptable, supportive, flexible, and connecting. They can adapt to suit the needs of a group of people while being supportive of the individual learner's needs or learning goals. Just like in the opening question, many people might be interested in different topics, in similar topics for very different reasons. Ideally, one program on that topic could support all of those people and their different reasons for coming to it. Responsive education should also be flexible to adapt to change when needs shift or in times of crisis, like many of the moments that have happened in the last 6 months. And last, regardless of context, education should create space for people to connect, to collaborate, to learn from each other and their life experiences, and to build a sense of collective community. We as an organization are focused on helping others build spaces that check all of these boxes. So with that in mind, I'll tell you a little bit about P2PU. So we are a nonprofit organization that's driven by 3 core values. Those are peer learning, community, and equity. As I mentioned earlier, we are 4 full-time employees based in 4 different countries: the United States, Canada, Germany, and South Africa. And we work to build a global community of people who share these values and bring them to their communities. We believe that effective learning is a social activity, and every person develops expertise through their own lived life experiences. And we also believe that people learn best when they are able to share those life experiences and connect with each other through their different paths. So in that spirit, we are working on building an open community of practice so that our projects can be shaped constantly by the people who are using them. This allows us to build education as a social good rather than a commodity. And representation and collaboration have been crucial for building equitable access amongst learners. Here is a glimpse of some of our global community. We work with librarians, educators, community organizers, and designers all over the world to run free social learning experiences called Learning Circles. Here's an example from a gathering that we had last year, or part of a gathering that we were at last year. So a little bit about Learning Circles. Learning Circles are a free and responsive model of peer learning. Put simply, a learning circle is a facilitated group of people who meet regularly to learn about a topic together. Up until 2020, learning circles used a pretty reliable structure. A group of learners and their facilitators, often a local librarian, would meet in person together in a public space, most often a local library. They would gather on a regular basis, typically 2 hours a week for 6 to 8 weeks, and they would use a free online course to work together to learn about a specific topic and from each other. So most of those qualities of a learning circle can be a little flexible and customized to the group and the topic and the timing. But there's one very important element that every learning circle should always have, and that is the person who starts the group, who is picking the material and who is responsible for helping everybody succeed, and that is the facilitator. So facilitators are a crucial part of the learning circle methodology and really the reason why they're successful in so many places. The facilitator is a guide. They're part of the peer group. They are there because they also want to learn about that topic. They're not an expert. They're not a teacher. They're not there to answer all of the questions and know all of the solutions. They are there. It's actually better if they don't know all of those things, and they can use that as an opportunity to ask questions of the group and involve everyone in teaching themselves. We designed learning circles so that with a little bit of training and some practice, anyone can be a facilitator. And this allows programming to grow out of all sorts of interests and be fairly easy to get started with. Learning circles, again, don't use a traditional teacher-student format, and they favor instead peer-to-peer learning. So that means that everyone in the group contributes evenly or equally and has an opportunity to help shape the way that the group meets, the information that they're working through, maybe the style of learning that the group is working through. And the facilitator is primarily there to keep everybody on track. To maybe make a loose agenda and just keep things moving so that you can fit all of your information into the prescribed amount of time. They're also there to make sure that everyone gets a chance to speak and to work with learners to help them realize their own personal learning objectives. Most of our facilitators are library professionals. Wait, go back. Most of our facilitators are library professionals who are using learning circles as a form of free education and public programming in their communities. And this has been a really wonderful and flexible, low-cost model that supports changing community needs. We'll talk in a little bit about what that has looked like this year, because it has certainly been a year of change and a need for responsive education. But in general, learning circles have always, for the last 5 years, have always been a really wonderful and flexible model that can adapt to any circumstance, any group of learners, and any topic. And so when we started running the Learning Circle program in early 2016, we started just in one city, and in that time, in the last 5 years, we have now run, our facilitators have now run 877 learning circles in 203 cities on nearly every continent. There were actually some in Australia, but it didn't fit on the slide. Sorry, Australia. But we have had really wonderful representation in all sorts of places for all sorts of topics and all sorts of communities.
So a question that came up for us this year, was how can we meet together when we can't physically be together? And I want to just mention also that we will have a number of links to free resources and guides that we'll share a little later in the presentation that have come out of this year and figuring out how learning circles have been able to adapt to a virtual space. And it's been pretty incredible to see the ways in which people who joined Ptcu originally for their interest in in-person group learning have so easily and quickly adapted the experience to suit the fact that we can't be together this year. So here's a little GIF of one of our community calls from earlier this year. When the pandemic started, we put the word out to our community that we wanted to help them make the transition to virtual learning. We had about 70 librarians and educators, mostly in North America, but in East Africa and Europe as well. No Australians, I don't believe, but that could have just been the aspect ratio of the slide. Anyway, so we had this great group come together, and we just went through all of our facilitation materials, and we said, how do we adapt this to meet the moment while staying true to our values of community, peer learning, and equity? And I think we've been just really, really impressed with what we did as a group, working through our materials, over the course of 6 weeks, sort of like a learning circle, to come up with a set of resources and guides that can help educators, community-based educators around the world run virtual learning circles. So this work culminated in a virtual learning circle handbook, which is free and open access online. And this is sort of the guide that we put out to our community to help them make that transition. And what we've seen from this is just a ton of interest in running flexible programs that are meeting the moment and recognizing that that looks very different in different places. And just a few quick examples, and then we'll let Nicole share a bit more from her experience. In Los Angeles, where we've worked for 3 years now, Los Angeles Public Library was very concerned that by moving learning circles to a virtual space like Zoom, they were not going to be able to reach a lot of people who either don't have the skill set to feel comfortable online, or they don't have consistent internet access at home. And so we worked with them to create conference call learning circles where people dialed in from their phone for 2 hours a week and learned Spanish together. And for us, this was very much a learning circle, because it was Los Angeles figuring out who they were trying to serve and figuring out how they could make that work in a way that was still very participatory and peer-led. And they've really taken a lead on creating these very accessible programs that don't require going to a place, and they don't require internet access during the meeting. I think the request was that people get access to some learning materials once during the week, download them, and then sort of go through those together. And this is something that we're now trying to share and advocate for other libraries when they come across this issue. In East Africa and Kenya, we saw a sort of shift in the types of participants who libraries were reaching. And with students not going to school as much during the pandemic, the library stepped in and started running virtual learning circles. And because we had been working with Kenya National Library Service for 4 years, they sort of had that infrastructure in place to just get started right away. And they didn't need to come up with a new strategic plan or do new trainings. They were equipped to sort of take in that new demand for providing educational opportunities for students through the library system. And then the final one I'll share is in St. Paul and Minneapolis and Minnesota. They found just a very different set of skills that they needed to teach to during the pandemic, and that before March of this year, a lot of their learning circles were focused on video editing, using Photoshop and things like that. And after once the pandemic hit, the library said, we see an immediate need for us to be taking more of a role in helping small business owners, helping people understand what a job search looks like in the virtual world. And so we were able to help them very quickly offer a new type of content that, again, was using the same model of facilitation that they had been using for the past 2 years. I think for me personally, something I'm very proud of is that for a lot of our library partners, learning circles have been the only program that has consistently run throughout 2020. And in some cases, where I live in Boston, there were some learning circles that were 3 weeks. They had just had their third meeting before mid-March, and they just switched and they said, okay, next week is online. and a few other library systems said, okay, we want to still be serving our patrons. In some cases, library staff are being looked at as the first to be furloughed, or in some cases fired right now, when libraries have no immediate plans to reopen and offer programming. And we're very proud that learning circles have been a very concrete tool that librarians can say, I can still do this right now from a distance. And that's exactly what I want, and what my colleagues want us to be able to be doing right now. Before I hand it over to Nicole to share her experience as a virtual and in-person facilitator in Cologne, I want to just quickly mention that a lot of this work has happened in Europe. We are working with 5 different organizations, many of whom are here in the chat, in Poland, Romania, Finland, Germany, and Portugal. And this was a 3-year Erasmus Plus project to start learning circles in these 5 countries, to do a bit of an evaluation and research on how online learning and adult learning was already working in these countries, to translate a lot of our tools and resources into these 5 other languages, and to start learning circles programs there. And this was, I think we're all excited for this project, and for other reasons, amongst other reasons, because there's going to be lots of wonderful trips to Portugal and Romania. And we've been having to adapt this program, not just in terms of what the learning circles look like, but what our community of practice looks like, of facilitators and of people who are running these programs. And so we've been having lots of virtual meetings, this one included, where we have been trying to model the experiences and the ways of being in learning circles like we would when things were in person. So Becky has just shared a link in the chat to the white paper that we authored in 2018, 2019, and a lot of other resources that we've been putting together as a team over this year, which has stayed quite busy. One of the things that we've been doing for the EU project, and that we can help set up for anyone else who's in this session, is a sort of custom landing page to sort of start sharing and promoting learning circles in your organization. So this is the landing page for Cologne's learning circles that describes a little bit about what learning circles are for Cologne. And then if you could scroll down, you would see cards of the learning circles that are happening that people are can sign up for. And so anytime anyone starts a learning circle in Cologne, that learning circle signs up there, and then we help you get things going, and it allows us all to see what's happening where, so we can sort of jump in and help run supportive programs. But Nicole, our colleague from Cologne, has a lot more to say about that. And so I'd like to pass the mic over to her, and we can hear from her for a little bit, talking about her experience with learning circles coming into 2020.
Thank you, Grif. Hi, James from the library. And it's been just about 3 years ago exactly that we offered our very first learning circle. And it has gone well. We have done 9 approximately learning circles since then, in person and even online. Just to tell you a bit about our experiences, we weren't sure what our patrons would be most interested in, so we cast a very wide net when we first presented this to our visitors, and we said, hey, here's a new program format we would like to are interested in, just like we asked you in the chat when we started the session, what are things you want to learn? And so we found a list of different courses that were appropriate for a learning circle that were in German language, but we had from selections from all different subjects. We had, a couple of computer classes, or finance, or history, or personal development. We didn't know what our patrons were really interested in. So once we got their responses to this, we just had posters hanging up, and they put stickers next to what they wanted. We had a good list that we could work with. Well, 3 years later in practice, now we can see which ones were the most successful. And for us, we were able to determine that our patrons are most interested in things that are recreational and sort of artsy and sort of fun, like photography or art history or bullet journaling. The courses that we've offered that were maybe very good but a little more academic didn't have as much interest. So that's something that now I've learned that from the experience, and going forward, I'll focus more on the things that people are still more interested in. But I do want to keep a variety, and so I know here and there I will put something in that's a little different just to try it and see if it'll stick, you know, and see what kind of responses we get. We've also experimented with offering the courses at various dates and times, sometimes on an afternoon or sometimes in an evening or on different days. And then we always do surveys, as with any program, to ask, you know, how did this work for you? Did you like this time? How did you hear about the program? And so we've found that, you know, evenings work best, certain evenings work better than others. So over time, we've been able to come to those conclusions. And the responses for those who have stayed with the programs have been very, very good. Most of the survey responses, the people say, oh, I was surprised how well this format worked, and I really liked it. And they, you know, contact me and ask, when are you doing another learning circle? What is, you know, what are some other topics? So they tend to come back and want to do more. We then also are considering changes. You know, one change was now with Corona, doing things online. During the lockdown, we actually did an online learning circle. I did one with my staff. And this fall, we've made the decision to offer a couple learning circles. One will be in person to see how that goes, and one will be online. We're going to go ahead and try it, but just to make it a little easier, we decided to offer one that we had already done in person, and we're going to offer the same one online, just because the online courses take a little more prep. With a normal in-person course, you need one person as a moderator, but with online, it's nice to have a second person there to help with the technical aspects, with switching screens and keeping up with chats or whatever. And you have to really do a little more planning to make sure the timing fits for your sessions. And so we're going to make it easier on ourselves by doing a course we've already done, and that way we know the content, we'll just have to adapt it a bit. We've also learned over time that you can customize your learning circles. We have had many mini learning circles that have only been, you know, 3 to 4 weeks versus maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and we found that for us, that works better if it works for the course to do it in that amount of time, because we also have space constraints here at the library as far as having an available space for that long a period. And so you can make the changes that you need to make it work for you. So I see our tendency moving then towards maybe 4-week learning circles more frequently versus 6 to 8 weeks. And it seems to work better squeezing them in between various holidays or carnival season or whatever is going on. Then with moving on to online, we're going to go ahead with it. I see us maybe continuing both formats in the future, just because it does give us more flexibility as to when we offer the classes. You know, as far as times and dates, there's so many constraints that we don't have anymore with that. We are also at this point going to look into possibly offering some English language courses. You know, you are of course maybe limited by what is available in your native language to offer. And we have a good number of German courses, but there's so many more wonderful English language courses. And now we've gotten the approval from the library management to try something in English. So those are changes that we're looking at doing, and we're going to see how they go. So in a few weeks, we'll be starting up with our online course, and everything will be on our website. And I'm glad that Ptcu is there in case I should need help with anything, and they will be there for you as well. But if you have any questions for me, my contact information is there, and please feel free to contact me.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm glad that you think we're here for you. We are. And it's been really amazing to watch you take learning circles in so many different directions in ways that we couldn't have really imagined when we first met a few years ago. We are going to sort of transition into more of an interactive part of this session. I'm going to talk just a little bit first about just how we sort of frame our work as an organization and how we can help you all out if you're looking to get learning circle programs started in your area. I'd say though also that if you have any sort of clarity questions or logistical questions or just things that you still want to understand a bit more about learning circles, put those in the chat right now and we can do a sort of little mini clarifying Q&A before we move on to the second section of our workshop. But basically, I just want to point out that, as an organization, we're primarily grant funded, but we also do work directly with library systems, both on like a city, a regional, and a national level. And all of this work is framed around helping people like yourselves run really high quality, low cost learning programs outside of formal education. So generally that's public libraries, but not exclusive. We think about the services that we offer, many of which are freely available to people who just sign up for a Ptcu account and join. We think about our services sort of in three different buckets. We are running, so the first is that we are running a community of practice. And this is a really amazing group of educators around the world who are all committed to running low-cost, high-quality programs in their communities. And so what this looks like in practice is, that we have an online forum, of course. We have monthly community calls where we're digging into specific issues about topics that relate to what we're all confronting right now as educators. So right now, we are talking a lot about racial justice. We are talking about virtual learning circles, as we've already talked about. And the community that we work with is really just defining a lot of these topics that we're going into more detail on. We also have other groups that are more committed to helping us build and design the software tools that we're developing, groups that are just reflecting on their own facilitation practices and coming to speak with other facilitators to think about how they can continue that practice of facilitation, which is really a lifelong pursuit. And then we are also running learning circles for our community of practice. And so we have a great 5-week course called Learning About Learning Circles, which we have developed as part of this European Union project, where we can run a virtual learning circle about learning circles, which is both exposing you to the ideas of learning circles in more details, but also giving you a chance to participate before you go on and facilitate. The second sort of bucket of goods and services that we offer are resources and courses. And so I think the most immediately useful is that we have a database of free online courses that we think work well for learning circles. We are not trying to make a search engine of every online course in the world. There are already tools that do that. We're trying to create a very refined set of freely available courses that have been tested and tried by facilitators in the past, and that we want you to show up to that page and feel pretty confident about choosing a course that's there and knowing that it's going to work all right. We also think, though, that we shouldn't be trying to make the perfect course, because so much of a learning experience is about the people who are there participating, and that oftentimes a sort of lightweight course that is having good discussion questions is actually going to be more effective than a big fancy course with tons of quizzes and sort of built-in retention gimmicks, basically. So if you go to our courses page, you'll see right now there's about 300 courses in English. And then as part of this project with the European Union, we've started to populate our database, our course database, with Polish, Romanian, Portuguese, German, and Romanian course materials. And then sort of related to this work, we also are working with subject matter experts to help create new courses and develop materials in topics that our partners care about that we think are underrepresented right now. So we're going to get into some of this in the second half of this workshop, and we're actually going to go through the process of collecting resources and ideas on a specific topic. And I sort of mentioned the facilitator training element of this. So this is all sort of a set of resources that we're constantly updating and adapting that are going to help you both choose a course to facilitate a learning circle and also be comfortable in that role as a facilitator. And then the third thing we offer, these tools for organizing. I pointed to Cologne learning circle page earlier. We basically are building very lightweight open source software tools that support this type of organization. There are some people who run learning circles using Meetup or Eventbrite or their library's event management system. That is okay. But for us, we have built a few tools that we think are really well designed for learning circles and that are also going to help us gather feedback from these experiences that help us learn what happened in a learning circle so that we can go and share that information with other people who might want to facilitate the same course. Because for us, I think overall we view our role as wanting every learning circle that runs anywhere in the world to be a little bit better because of everything that's happened before it. And so our tools that we've developed, whether it's the sort of surveys or the aggregated feedback about course materials, all of this stuff is helping us better serve future learning circles. So as I said, like anyone can join a Ptcu, anyone can join Ptcu for free. You can participate in our calls, you can add courses, you can facilitate a learning circle. And then if you're in more of an institutional level of getting started with learning circles, we offer a number of these services and tools on a very, very sliding scale based on what you're able to provide if you want to start a project with us. So that's sort of how we frame our work as an organization in support of running this bigger project. I'm not sure then, I guess, it seems like there's a few questions here in the chat. I think it seems like Becky, you've been managing them over chat. So I think we can move on and I will hand it over to Nico.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Grif. Great to see everybody here. My name's Nico from Ptcu, and I'm in Kingston, Ontario. And just a reminder for people who just joined us, we're talking about learning circles and community, responsive community-based education. And learning circles are spaces for people to learn together in person and also online now these days. So I'm going to now help guide you through a preparation process for creating your own learning circle. The result of this exercise, which we're going to do together, the best of our ability, will be the creation of material that we hope will be immediately useful for you in your own learning circles or any type of community-based education program that you might do at your library. So the process that I'm going to be walking you through is replicable, and you can do it all yourselves at another time. And we, as Ptcu, are also here to guide you through this process in a much more extended, longer, and deeper level. So this is just a little taste for you. For the exercise itself, we're going to be asking you a number of questions, and we ask that you actively participate and respond with as many ideas in the chat as you can. So right now, if I look at the number here, there's 52 of you, and I hope to see 52 times 10 responses in the chat box. So please add as many responses as you can and get your hands ready next to the keyboard to respond. While you listen and participate and see what other people are saying in the chat box, in the background, Grif and Becky actually are going to be feeding in your responses to a larger useful document that you'll have access to at the end. So don't think your ideas will just kind of disperse into the internet. We hope to turn your ideas into a real functional document. And later as well, through this exercise, we're also going to invite many of you to join our video call, to share your thoughts and responses to these questions verbally through video chat. So we'll ask you to join when the time is right. So let us begin. As I mentioned, learning circles are groups of people who want to learn something together. So you might want to think about, well, what is that something? How might you discover what that topic is? So we started this exercise with a simple question. What was something that you wanted to learn? Another way of starting to think through that process of starting a learning circle is to consider a topic that responds to a community interest or your own interest or a local interest of that community. So let's just start with that. Let's just start about thinking about what processes do we consider right now? What methods do you use to understand the topics of your community that your community wants to learn about right now? So in the chat box, respond as much as you can. Think through, brainstorm, how do you come across understanding the topics of your community that your community is interested in learning about? How do you find out about these interests? What strategies have worked for you in your library or any context that you have in terms of understanding the topics or interests of your local community? So yeah, please write down as much as you can, be as specific as you want. And I encourage you to write down as many things that have worked. We're going to be feeding in your responses to a larger document that we hope to share with you soon. What works for you?
And for those of you who are saying you like to do surveys, like, let's hear more. Like, what questions work? What questions are horrible? Like,
Yeah.
we want the details.
Yeah. So if you were to make an online survey, if you like community feedback, what actually would be the question that you would ask? What we do something at Ptcu called the Q method that is run by started by a librarian in Detroit. I think Nicole has done this as well before. And people say, okay, we have a few different ideas. They use a dotmocracy. They use stickers on their they use stickers in their library entrance. You could also do a survey pointing out 10 or 20 different topics. You say, what it would be interesting to you? Mark your interest, sign up as well. What dates would be possible for you to meet as well? So we call that the Q method. And it's a nice, simple exercise to see what people's interest is. Yeah, are there any polls that you might use? Any online polls? Do you use Google surveys? What kind of polls do you end up using? We have a few that we'd like to use as well. Do you talk to any organizations? What specific organizations do you talk to?
Nico, you want to bring someone in to share over video?
Sure. Yeah. Anybody speak to you, Grif? You've been noticing the chat. Is there anybody?
Well, someone's in the queue, so we'll let him in and see.
Go for it. Who's just joined us?
No, I'm not sure where they went.
Maybe if anybody would like to join us right now, all you have to do is click on the top right of your screen. There's a join video, and we will accept you. We will accept you, whoever you are, and tell us about your process for identifying community needs. Maybe Nicole, maybe just briefly, why don't you share if you're because you're on video as well, how do you go about understanding your own community needs in Cologne, Germany?
Well, I shared a bit about how we did a survey and we just posted it at the library. Of course, that survey is now 3 years old. And since we're going to be moving more to the online format, I do want to do an online poll, which we'll probably do over Facebook. You know, that'll be the easiest thing for us to find out, you know, what are the new things people are interested in. And I mentioned in the chat, one thing I want to do here is, you know, build on some of the programs that are already on offer from other library departments or from outside presenters. It might be similar, your organizations where there's so much going on, I don't even know half the times what's scheduled because there's everything going on. And I might as well build on some of that. And that happened as well earlier this year when before Corona, we had a very nice hand lettering learning circle. And after it ended, like a week later, there was a one-day workshop from an outside presenter on a similar topic. So I was able to funnel the people to that. And that was a nice bonus. So those are the things I'm looking to do. And then again, every learning circle that's offered, I ask the people, what else are you interested in? What else do you want to do? And I get all sorts of ideas, which is wonderful. But the problem is usually I can't find an appropriate learning circle for something like that. And so that's why a couple of the courses I've offered, I created the content myself from YouTube videos. So that's something I would look at more in the future, you know, see if you can just find something to fill that need, to offer it anyway.
Great. So it sounds like like when you do any type of programming, when you were doing in-person learning circles, you just ask people. And also when you were doing your surveys, who would you send that to? Did you have an ongoing list, or did you have people who signed up? Would this be distributed through the website, the library's website?
Well, the first time I did it, it was very simple. It was just a regular poster that we printed, and it was posted in various locations, like in the library. So it was limited to the people who actually accessed our building. But that's why I would like to do this online survey through Facebook, just because it's going to reach a much more wide audience, because we don't have as many people coming into us now to the building proper. And I think since we'll be doing some online courses, we'll be reaching a different audience than the people who would usually just come to the central library at all times. Also, we've been very focused on our central library. We had planned on moving out to the branches this year, and then Corona happened. And so I think once we're able to do that, we'll find different interests in different parts of town. And we might even then do something, and even like here in Germany, maybe we would do something in a totally different foreign language where there's high population of a certain group with a foreign language. There are all sorts of possibilities on expanding this.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. And something that we've heard that speaks to, I think, what you were saying is realizing that you may have your own interest, you may have an understanding of the people who access your library, but there might be other partners as well that you've worked with in the past who might have an entirely different audience, who have a need, have an interest, and you as a librarian or working at the library are in a great opportunity to host them either in a virtual or in-person environment to respond to their community needs. So thinking about your partnerships who may have a different audiences or networks that to tap into. So we're going to move forward with this next option. So now that you've thought about your community needs, you've thought, oh, I have an interest, I want to learn about, I think some people were talking about learning a new language, perhaps, digital skills, programming, I think was mentioned before. So you have an interest, you have a need there. Now you want to say, okay, let's think about that specific topic a little bit more. And so you want to understand your learners specifically. So we've decided there was a whole number of broad interests that you came up with when we asked your warm-up question. And we thought, well, what is a very important topic of the day? There's a lot of things going on in the world, but we thought one thing that I think a lot of people are interested right now is climate change education. So we're going to focus on that topic specifically, climate change education. And also, I want you to think about when we do this exercise is also think from a personal level and considering yourself as a learner, not just your friends or your colleagues or patrons, but also think about yourself as a learner in this environment too. So we're trying to think about understanding the learner's environment, and specifically, we're wondering why would someone want to learn about this topic? Why would somebody want to learn about climate change education? And so I want you to put yourself in those shoes as well. And so right now in the chat, as much as you can, let's brainstorm together. Why would somebody want to learn about climate change education? What would motivate them to learn about this topic or take part in this issue specifically? How could it help improve their lives? And also thinking about this from your own standpoint, why would you want to learn about climate change education? What would motivate you to learn more about this topic? So yeah, take a couple minutes and think through your own process and write as many responses as you can. And again, we'll be turning some of these responses into a document that we'll be sharing with you later. Well, why would someone want to learn about climate education? And as you continue to type, I would like to invite anyone who's here right now to join us by video. So just please click on the top right corner to request to join. And if you have an interest in this topic, or if you don't, if you just want to share your responses, join us and introduce yourself by video and share your responses for why somebody might want to learn about this topic. Is there anyone who would like to join us who's feeling excited to speak? Please.
Some great responses in the chat, so I encourage everyone to be reading along as we're going along.
Yeah. I think about myself in this context, of course, and I think about my children. I think about myself and because trying to be a better citizen of sorts. I think about the water systems that I enjoy swimming in. I think about the climate change migration that might happen over the next, or is happening over the current time in terms of people's well-being. I think those would motivate me to learn more about what I can do, and also in terms of political organizing, in terms of encouraging my politicians to act on this as well. I'd like to learn more about that. That would motivate me. Thinking that I would have, I can change, maybe kind of some encouragement, thinking that I can make a difference. What do you think, Grif? Should we move on, or should we ask for somebody to join us? Yep. Okay.
I love the awkward silence, so I think we could linger here for a couple more minutes. We're still getting great comments in the chat. So
if you're with anybody in your family, I know people. Oh, go ahead, Becky.
Oh, I was going to say the responses in the chat are wonderful. So even if we want to read some of those out instead of putting people on the video spot, I think that would be pretty great too.
Yeah, great. Why don't I just do that? Why don't I say a few of these things here? Debbie Williams has personal interest to be more informed, to understand more, and be able to filter the various news articles and viewpoints. That's very important. I know trying to understand what is truthful media is very important for people, especially librarians, in supporting people to learn more about that these days. Mary says, become knowledgeable about climate and to teach children the importance of managing the environment for the future. Dirk says, it's a topic that will have an influence in many parts of my life, so I'd like to be able to discuss it and know what it entails. They could be having a class assignment, Lillian says. Any final thoughts? Maybe ask your friends or your family who are around you right now. Why would someone want to learn about this topic? Why would you want to learn about this topic right now? Maybe try to be a bit more specific.
I mean, I'll say one thing from my perspective is that I find that a lot of the sort of education materials that I come across on climate change are either they're so micro or they're so small. And like, you know, I understand that we should stop using plastic straws and things, but I find that it's either so specific towards things that like I can do as an individual right now, or it's like huge, big picture doom and gloom about the future. And I feel like I constantly am looking for some things that are a little bit more in between those things. And I think that speaks to a lot of what we've seen in the chat, thinking about local political organizing, thinking about, as you know, as parents, how we talk to our children. And I think that's, for me, that's an excitement to think about the learning circle model with climate change and climate justice, because I think it can create a space that is still very local and responsive to what's happening immediately, but is bigger than just me as an individual. And so that to me is why I get very excited about thinking about the ways that learning circles can be used for this topic. I'm not sure if Daisy was joking when she said it's a hot topic, but I like the pun.
Oh, Nico, I think you're muted.
I think through thinking about why somebody would like to learn about this topic influences a few different directions. It thinks about, well, I mean, how do I market this to different populations? Are there other partners that I can be involved to market this to other groups? It also frames the language of like both the material, but also the resources that I might be interested in. So it helps me thinking about where I might find those resources or specific topics within the broad topic of climate change education. Okay, great. Thanks, everyone. If you have any more thoughts on this, please, now's the time. There's about 40 of you plus, so please, I'd like to see a few more if I can on the chat box, if you have any more responses to why somebody would like to learn about this. So we're gonna move on to this, and again, we're kind of creating a resource together, is about finding resources. So remaining on the same topic of climate change education. So if you were to think about this right now, not knowing, just as an individual who's trying to learn more about climate change education, where would you look for resources about this topic? Are there specific websites that you use? Are there organizations that you know about specifically right now, or those that have experience that could help you find these resources? Where would you look for resources about this topic, about climate change education? and feed it into the chat box. Again, if anybody would like to join us by video, please request to join, and we'd love to hear from you, and we'd like to hear your voice as well. Where would you look for resources on climate change education, specifically on some of the smaller topics that you addressed as well? Are there organizations that you know of in your region that could be helpful, that you've heard of being useful? Are there specific websites that might have resources for you? Let us know. Where would you look, Nicole, while I have you here? Might as well drag in another voice. Where would you look for resources on this topic? It's a pretty broad topic. Where would you start?
Well, I actually found a very excellent online climate change course that we did offer, and it was a panel of experts, particularly many from like the Goethe Institute and other renowned scientific institutions. So I had a ready-made course, and I supplemented it with resources we have at the library on the subject, with the books and the DVDs, etc. And then since it's always in the news, I would just make sure to always share whatever local news article, or in the German press, there had been a recent article about the topic. So since it's timely, it's really easy to find more than enough like that. But I really like the value of the discussion with the participants. And so since I moderated this course, but I was not the instructor, and so I turned it over to them. I said, "What else have you heard? What else are you reading on this? You're interested in this topic, so what have you been looking at? Who have you talked to?" And I'm always pleasantly, I'm not surprised. I think it's wonderful. The people who could take part with various backgrounds, they have all sorts of different resources and things they can share. In the climate change course, one of the participants was from a Central American country, I forget which one, and so he had a totally different viewpoint, from having grown up in this other country with climate change and seeing the devastation being wrought there. And so just the personal experiences that the participants had were a really big part of the discussions, and they got just as much from that, I think, than having found some other local expert to share something.
Definitely finding other resources that you may not be connected with, and from your learners themselves, hearing from other resources that they know of. Excellent. Anyone else in the chat box? I'm seeing crickets right now, or I'm not hearing crickets. Maybe you're just deep pause right now. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Where would you look for resources about climate change education if you were to run a learning circle on this topic right now? Where would you start? If there's anybody who, I look like somebody who tried to join by video, please try again. We just tried to add you to this video, but something didn't happen. So we'd love to have you speak if you can. Okay. Well, just to kind of summarize a few different approaches here. I mean, when Grif was speaking about what Ptcu offers, and people were asking about, well, where do these courses come from? So we do, as a community, we create, we look for courses and resources that are of value to us immediately. So on our course page, we have a number of different courses that have been curated by our wider community network, people like you who are also looking for resources in their own language. We have resources and courses in German, in Polish, in Romanian right now. And if you're in another part of the world and who speaks another language, you also could add your own resources and course that speak to climate change education or whatever speaks to you right now, and add it to our larger database of resources and courses that could be useful to your learning circle. And we're also creating resources. So we're working with our partners to create resources and topic guides that help people think about a specific topic, just as we're creating this resource for you. So we're going to move on just to the final bit, final thought here about, so if we were to focus on climate change education, and you found a number of resources, Nicole mentioned the Goethe Institute, who had some resources about learning about climate change specifically. And so our final question here, and please respond in the chat as best as you can. How might you approach presenting this topic or issue to your communities? What strategies have worked for you related to this topic or others in terms of presenting an educational topic? What mindsets or practices should we be aware of when we introduce this topic? And also, if someone would like to join by video, please join us. So how might you approach presenting climate change education in your community? Maybe Becky, just to hear another voice. How might you think about presenting this topic?
Oh, sure. And I was going to add, if anybody
You're on video.
You're mute. Oh, I unclicked it. Do you still hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh,
I can hear you. Yep.
Oh, yeah. I was going to add, if anybody has experience beginning to explore topics like this in their community already, we'd love to hear about those practices that you've used. I think that for me, I would probably find a specific approach to the topic because it's so big. So I would look for, and it's sort of all encompassing. So I think I would look for a specific angle into it, probably something related to lifestyle changes or perspectives about ways that I can change both the way that I exist day to day, but then how I kind of contribute that back to a larger ecosystem, because it's all part of one system. And then I would focus specifically on that and present it to my peers, maybe on social media, or maybe just like texting my specific friends who I know are interested in that type of change for themselves, and work on it in a small group of people I know first, and then maybe start working with a larger community once I feel a little bit more comfortable with or knowledgeable about the materials. But I'd love to do a learning circle, or maybe a compilation of themed weeks, and then everyone could provide their own resources or their approaches to how they've handled things like waste or their eating habits or purchasing habits, or like making changes to travel or commuting.
Great, thanks, Becky. I think that's a good approach. I like the idea of, for myself, I could imagine in my neighborhood bringing everybody together who have an interest in this topic, and then separating based on specific topics. And I'd love to see projects, people actually acting together, kind of working towards something that they're both learning about a specific issue, but they're also acting locally in a capacity to create something, if only as a presentation of what is possible, but also as a way that actually meaningfully creates change, or creates a kind of a space for people to learn that are not part of the learning experience, so in a public way. Any other thoughts on how you might approach presenting this topic on climate change education in the chat box? All right. Does anybody have any actual resources that they've actually seen related to climate change education that you'd like to share? Nicole, do you have the link by any chance of the resources that you used before?
Just going to the Ptcu website to pull it up because it's in the course listing.
Ah, the course listing.
So I will link it in a minute here.
Great.
Was it the University of Michigan course, Nicole?
No, this was a German language course.
Oh,
so I'll find it.
Just to quickly connect back to something I was mentioning earlier, one of the hope we will, we'll pull together these resources and share them out. But this is also great information for us to have as we interface with and speak with course developers and subject matter experts. We have relationships with a lot of big online course developers. And I mentioned the University of Michigan one because they have an online course called Act on Climate Change. And they've been thrilled to see how it's been used in the Learning Circle format. And so we have, we can go back to some of these organizers and tell them how they can better develop their course materials to suit the Learning Circle format, which in turn hopefully makes it easier for all of you to run these types of programs in your communities.
Great. Have you, maybe as a final thought for anybody here who's on the chat, please, we'd love to hear from you. Has your library run any climate change education programs that have worked for you? Either virtually or have you taken part of something in person? We'd love to hear what your library is doing related to this, this learning topic.
Thing that just occurs to me, occasionally we have a speaker series on sort of ecological type questions, with gardening or making and cleaning products and whatever. And this ties into what I said before about building on some of our existing library programs. Oftentimes we have like 50 to 70 people who show up for this or for one of these talks by a presenter. But I think in the future, if I plan it right, it might be nice just to at that event say, hey, who might be interested in meeting, over a few weeks on an ongoing basis to explore this a little more, to discuss, and just build on that, because that's a built-in audience there. And that's something I haven't done yet, but something I definitely, once Corona lets up a bit, see doing in the future, because that's where you have the people who are already there for that reason.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I could imagine people talking about using like a lecture hall series about climate change and then turning that into a regular occurring learning circle where people meet regularly to kind of delve further into the topic. I could also imagine any other type of public programming that you do, like book club, for example, and turning that into a specific a learning group where people have a specific thing that they are interested in learning about. Yeah, so you could kind of reframe it, pair a number of your programs into a learning circle, if you'd like, or also just any type of learning program. And I think what we really like about learning circles is that they're social, they're repetitive, so you can turn these type of one-off events into something that creates community, but is also kind of repetitive in a way that it supports people's regular learning. Okay, well, I'm going to say thank you for everybody who's contributed on the session. This was just a short little exercise of something and ways that Ptcu could support your organization for thinking about what your learning topics are and what your learning needs are in terms of turning that into a responsive community-based education program. So thanks everyone, and I'm going to pass it to Becky to continue the program.
Yeah, so I just shared a link in the chat to a Google Doc under link. So collaboratively, we all just built a resource list about how to start running a programming on climate change education. This is the focus of this exercise was just to use a specific topic as a placeholder, but this is a replicable process that can be done with nearly any topic. And it can be done at any scale. You can do this. You can run through these questions to prepare yourself on your own or with your colleagues or in your community or any subset of people. We are in the process of building more topic resources like these as a way to kickstart that process for facilitators interested in running very specific and very common or frequently requested topics. We've already put together similar resource guides like these with our community around topics like digital literacy and how to teach and present those skills to your community. And we also had a great working group to develop to collect resources about anti-racism and activism as the protests started to build in the summertime. And these have been really wonderful collaborative experiences that allow facilitators to really see a wide breadth of relationships with the topic, of strategies for how to teach or how to facilitate, of resources for where to start learning about something so that you can start learning about it with others. And this is a great way for you to prepare to teach any topic like the one, or to facilitate a topic just like the ones that we started with at the very beginning of the session. So again, there's a link to the doc in the chat. Usually after this, we go in and we spruce it up a little bit and just group everything easily, and then post it in a place like our community forum. Grif has been sharing links to our community roundups for the previous topic lists I just mentioned. So if you keep an eye on our forums, or if you keep an eye on this document, it'll be a little bit more curated shortly. But thank you for helping collaborate to build this resource. And we hope it was helpful to get a taste of what that process looks like. So we are now, sorry, we have a guest. Would you like to say anything?
This is Koenig from Kenya, and I just wanted to contribute something on how we could create learning circles and, in relation to the climate change. I just want to share some small experience on how I want to create one, because now we cannot start because of COVID-19. I just saw something that should be done in my new area that was posted. It is too dry, and we have good rivers. We have good hills for us to at least have some climate to be cool. But they try to do some logging. So as a library, I try to unite or bring together the youths so that we can discuss this issue together. Then from there, we are planning for a training to invite some experts to give us some way forward, so that we can do a learning circle on environmental change. So that we are planning to do some tree planting, but for now we are already starting some tree nurseries in the library, so that we can build up the nursery seedlings, so that we can go out and build and try plant those mountains, so that we can bring in good rains. And also we are studying this in the library so that we can make the library space cool for users to come in the library. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. What a cool use of that program.
And
I hope that it's successful. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I would just, while you're here, could you just quickly introduce yourself? And I really appreciate your point on climate change education, but also I think it's worth mentioning everything that's been done over the past few years in Kenya. Could you just share a bit about yourself and also what's been done in Kenya with Ptcu and learning circles?
Thank you, Nico. I happen to be one of the Ptcu TOTs in Kenya, and we've done great as Kenyans, because you as identified Kenya to be something that will change through so that capitalize on their gaps and give back to the community, and also at least solve their problems at hand using the libraries through learning circles. So on my I was working in a different library where we have these motorbike riders who really do not know how to do online marketing of their services. But probably if you want to travel somewhere, somebody could just come in and maybe do some kind of marketing of their services. So I tried to pull those groups together and did a learning circle on how to market their services, or rather creating websites in a weekend, those causes, so that maybe somebody could come in and also they could get good customers, generate more income, and invest in other businesses. So by introducing them to marketing online, we could also come in and train them on how they could save and generate more income through their services. So each cause develops in another stage, so that the customers or the users or the communities itself can bring up change into their lives. So as Kenyan librarians, we have really benefited from that platform, and Ptcu has been a good partner in Kenya National Libraries. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Koi Kazungu. Appreciate it. Good to see you as well.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So that closes out our session. We have a few ways that you can keep in touch with us. We will have a live expo booth during the two kind of collective expo times in the schedule tomorrow and Thursday, and the times in the conference time are on the slide here. You can always reach out to us by email at thepeople@ptcu.org if you have any specific questions for us. Otherwise, again, you're welcome to come by the expo booth and either chat or hop on video and just talk with us about maybe your local programming needs. And then here is a link to our website and all of our social channels if you'd like to learn more or keep in touch with our community. We have about 15 minutes left, so if anybody has any specific questions, feel free to just jump on the video request or type them in the chat and we will respond to them, but we'd love to speak with you. So please feel free to join us on video. Oh, again, Grif just shared a link again to the slide deck that we just went through. In the speaker notes of Google Slides, you can find all of the links that we shared in context. They're all in the context of the slide that they were shared in. So if there's anything you want to come across, again, you can find them there.
I like
If we were all together, right? Yep. Go ahead, Nicole.
Go ahead, Nicole.
I like the variety of ideas that were popping up in chat, and I was reflecting again on the 3 years of doing this with, the guidelines that Ptcu created were very helpful, and then but I was so focused at first on saying, oh, it has to be 6 weeks, oh, and it has to be an online course, some open educational resource, and just over time being able to move away from that. I like that as a framework, and that's what I aim for, but hey, I would say try anything and be creative and see what works. I like the simplicity of the Ptcu format, and especially when you have it, it's the peer learning, and those things. So it's so adaptable, and that's why I think we will be able to keep on doing this for a very long extended period of time, because it doesn't have to fit just one template. So I've got ideas from the chat, the ideas in the chat as well, and the document will help.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but your comment leads to a very important question, I guess, which is when you are adapting the learning circle in all these different ways, what are the values or the attributes that you think are always common? That everything, for you to think about it as a learning circle, what stays the same every time?
For me, I think it's the temptation is easily there to have it turn into a regular class with the instructor role, and I really like keeping the focus on the peer learning and the participants and having them, satisfy if they have a question. If you want to satisfy your curiosity, let's all help together in getting you to find an answer. So that for me has to remain very strong, and that's been a difficult thing to get across here in Germany. They still expect a teacher, and so that I have to keep telling them, and so that for me is still like a really #1 thing, that it's peer learning, and I'm just here to start the video and help you kind of thing. Yeah, that's been my main thing. So I think everything else just about is up for grabs. The type of course that you offer, is it it doesn't have to be this online course. It can be, anything you find online. And again, this focus on online learning, is it maybe there's a course where there's a very small part of the online learning, and 80% is a discussion, or that's what it turns into over the course of the weeks. And I've come to learn that's fine. Sort of go with the flow. As the moderator, you want to keep things on track and make sure everyone's learning on it, but it's the whole thing about it being a very democratic system. And so that's something I think the participants sometimes have a hard time realizing, that they have input into this. And sometimes I'll say, hey, if you guys want to do more discussion, we have, the room is free next week. We can add another if you want to. Sort of giving them the power to form the course a bit. So those are the things I think are very valuable and perhaps different from other programs where it's a very set format. And here we have the flexibility. But sometimes it's you can tell people that it's hard for them to realize it.
Yeah, I'm in the process of running my first learning circle ever, when we've met twice. And I remember in one of the monthly facilitator calls that we had a couple of months ago, someone mentioned that they handle the teacher expectation, oh, you're here to teach me, we're not learning together. They handled that in the first meeting of every learning circle that they run, they always mention, like, they'll introduce the format, they'll do some tech support maybe, and then they'll use the line, this is the most you'll ever hear me talk. Is like, I am here to facilitate, but I'm not here to teach. And then after that, they sort of just, like, anytime they finish an activity or a read or a time spent reading or watching something, they try to avoid ever being the first person to speak. And I've taken that and used that in my learning circle, and it's really helped that everybody wants to fill that kind of silence. So yeah, using that phrase I found was very clear that, like, you hear me talk a lot right now, this is not the expectation. And then, yeah, I just try to fill it with awkward silences. And we've had a pretty lively bunch ever since. So I've been happy about that.
Nico wrote in the chat, any other questions or thoughts for Nicole, for us? We're coming to the end. If we were all together, we'd be going and having coffee and pastries together now. But yeah, anything's fair game. So in the chat, jump into the moderation. We're happy to spend the next 8 minutes answering any other questions that we can.
Oh, my learning circle, is it online? Yeah. Yeah, we're meeting. Yeah, I have, I'm based in Berlin, but most of my community is in Portland, Oregon, which is 9 hours behind me. So I scheduled it in Portland time because I figured most of the people who would join might be in that time zone. But I have 4 or 5 learners coming consistently. And I think we had the first meeting, we had 5 learners from 4 different countries, which is pretty amazing. So it's very different than meeting in person, where you have the local connection, but it has been really wonderful to meet online and be able to meet someone in London and in Toronto and in Portland, Oregon, and I'm in Berlin. So we had it was a great way to learn about completely different perspectives.
So yeah, I think speaking to the different places is coming out in the chat as well, with people arguing friendly about whether we'd be drinking coffee or something stronger right now, depending on where we were where we were in the world. I think I want to just quickly mention, and Nurhat, I say go ahead and ask your question in the chat. Oh, I see it there. We will, like Becky said, we will clean up this document that we've been working on, and we'll share it on our community site, our community forum, in the next little while. So I think that, here, I'll just put the link, check out that page in a couple of days if you want to see the updated guide. I don't think there's a way, unfortunately, for us to reach out directly to the 50 people who are here right now. But the other thing I want to just say to that point is that if you just go to ptcu.org, you can create a free account. And by doing that, you'll start getting, like a monthly email from us that sort of features new documents and new resources that we've been working on. This is the direct link, this sort of long sign-up link. So anyone here, if you want to just fill that out, we don't collect any of your personal data for weird reasons. You'll just have it, there'll be a button that you can push to say, I want to hear from Ptcu, and we will send out monthly updates with these sorts of topic guides, updates from learning circles around the world, and that will probably be the best way for you to sort of stay in touch and hear about what we're doing.
So I just wanted to share with you my one final thing. We're doing something, we just thought of it yesterday, in fact, with the US elections coming up, which of course has worldwide interest, and many people in Germany are very interested in this. We're doing something very simple. A book display with all of our new books on the topics on the US election, US political system. There was a documentary on one of our public channels on the US election. So we're just gonna have the books, and advertise this documentary that is available online, and have a couple of dates, one online, one in person, where people can watch the documentary together. It's only 45 minutes and have a 45-minute discussion. So I'm going to market that as a mini learning circle, and we're going to do that this month, or end of the month, end of October. So just, using something timely coming up, and it doesn't have to be complicated. We're just going to go for it.
We had somebody request to join by video, and it looks like our moderation panel is acting up a bit. If you are trying to join and it won't let you anymore, just type in the chat and we can manually invite you. Sorry. Otherwise, I think we are getting close to the end of the hour. So thank you all so much for spending the last 90 minutes with us and learning about learning circles. Again, we will be available at the Expo Hall if you want to come ask us any broad or specific questions about ways that we can help you bring learning circles to your area. And you can also keep in touch with us through our website, our community forum, any of our social channels, or by email. And the email address that's linked here will connect to all of us individually that are in the chat or in the video. So if you have specific questions for anybody, you're welcome to write to all of us.
That last question, Monica is asking about learning circles for cooperative writing programs. The answer is yes. And I'm going to just quickly share with you one course that I love. A colleague of ours and a neighbor of mine at Boston Public Library loves writing fiction, and she actually put together 3 online courses designed for learning circles about fiction writing. And so if you go to that link I just sent, there are 3 courses: Learning to Write Fiction Beginner course, a whole course on world building, and a course on writing a series. And I believe that they are planning to make 1 or 2 more courses in the next year or so. So these are great resources because they're free, open access courses about writing, but they're also designed for learning circles. So as a facilitator, it's quite easy to use this resource and know that the person who put the course together was thinking about learning circles when they made it. There are also plenty of other courses. And from our courses page, you can type in writing and see what else pops up. And that link is right there. Yeah, I think that's all the time we have then. Nicole and Koi, want to thank you again for jumping into the video and sharing your experiences. It's always a highlight to get to hear from folks like you. All right, well, bye everyone.